that as Chief Medical Officer of Health for Yukon, responsible for the public health in the Yukon, that I have recommended the cancellation of the 2020 Arctic Winter Games.
Tonight, disappointment that this year's Arctic Winter Games are cancelled.
And so they came forward and they advocated, and they had a federation of Metis, of the Metis settlements of Alberta.
And perspectives on Métis settlements in Alberta. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Worries about the COVID-19 virus, also known as the coronavirus, have hit the north hard. Less than a week away, the 2020 Arctic Winter Games in Whitehorse have been cancelled. The 2020 Arctic Winter Games host society, the Yukon government, and the city of Whitehorse made the announcement on the weekend following a recommendation from Yukon's Chief Medical Office. APTN's Chris McIntyre has more.
It was a sad announcement made by Yukon's acting Chief Medical Officer of Health, Catherine Elliott.
It is out of an abundance of caution today that as Chief Medical Officer of Health for Yukon, responsible for the public health in the Yukon, that I have recommended the cancellation of the 2020 Arctic Winter Games that were scheduled to be held here in Whitehorse beginning next week.
There are still no reported cases of COVID-19 in Yukon, and the risk remains low. However, other regions are seeing an unexpected spread of the virus. The 2020 Arctic Winter Games were expected to bring over 2,000 participants to the city of Whitehorse. The decision to cancel was made to ensure the health and safety of visitors and locals alike.
I'm making this recommendation out of concern for the health and safety of Yukoners, of all athletes, of staff, of volunteers, and of families, for their home communities throughout the circumpolar north.
With the game scheduled to kick off Saturday, March 15th, the news came as a surprise and a disappointment to many of the people that have been preparing for the busy week. Eric Porter is one of the coaches for Arctic Sports. He has been training for months with the athletes on Team Yukon and expressed how the team took the news.
Just under, I'd say about an inch.
Complete shock right away, just disbelief, kind of hoping we were joking, wishing it's not true. I mean, just kind of takes time to sink in, probably will even over the next couple of weeks here. Grip.
Organizers and co-hosts say they are disappointed to have to make this decision and express deep gratitude to all involved with participating in the Whitehorse 2020 Winter Games. Chris McIntyre, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thousands of youth north of 60 are, of course, left disappointed after it was announced that the Arctic Winter Games would be cancelled because of the COVID-19 virus. APTN's Charlotte Morit-Jacobs heard the reactions from coaches and athletes in the Northwest Territories.
It may look like just another day at school, but for Danica Tatune and Naomi Yukon, they are keeping a brave face after being told they will not attend the Arctic Winter Games 2020.
I was very disappointed. Our goal to going was to get gold, and we've been practicing 2 times a day, every day.
The beloved games were canceled on Saturday following concern over COVID-19. Roughly 2,000 participants from the Northwest Territories were set to go. That's Yukon there, number 3 with the ball, showcasing her skills in a competition in Vancouver. It would have been her 3rd and final games. She is 17 and hails from the Satu region of the NWT.
I'm so happy to represent Delaney and work for it, with basketball. I have so much passion for it.
Aaron Wells, Yukon's coach, says he's shocked by the news.
For a lot of these girls, it has been on their mind a lot longer than the tryouts. And so they've been training, working out, perfecting their craft. And
the games were last held in the South Slave NWT in 2018. Tautune, who is 16, participated in those games for soccer and says she loved the experience.
And it really put our skills on the national stage and the international stage even. And it was super competitive, and it's one of the only games where Team NWTs, it's pretty close, the games that we play against other contingents, and I think it's a great way to embrace your cultural experiences as well.
It also would have been her first year competing in Arctic sports had the games in Whitehorse taken place.
I know at the tryouts there was a lot of different combinations of Inuit culture that was incorporated into it, and it was just like such a great feeling because I'm not really used to being immersed in a like in my own culture because I moved to Yellowknife when I was such a young age, and being able to represent my culture and my community of Rankin Inlet, where I was born, it definitely would have meant a lot. But
NWT athletes will be reimbursed for their participant fee and will be able to keep their uniforms. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Last week, the federal government created a super committee to coordinate federal response to the COVID-19 virus, aka the coronavirus. 8 cabinet ministers were initially named to it. Missing, however, was anyone who deals with Indigenous people, like Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller. And as Todd Lamarand reports, the NDP questioned that omission.
Winnipeg Centre MP Leah Gazan stood in the House of Commons today.
So will the Prime Minister admit he was wrong and reverse his decision to exclude the Minister of Indigenous Service from the COVID-19 committee?
Miller said while he's not a main committee member, he is an alternate.
But I am participating in all the calls, and even more importantly, I'm ensuring that my officials are engaged at every level in the communities to make sure that people that are, as you know, most vulnerable are getting both the information, the indication that the general population in Canada is getting, as well as.
However, MP Nikki Ashton called Miller's omission a slap in the face.
The actual main committee members include the Minister of Tourism. So what we're hearing from the government is that tourism is more important in this strategy than Indigenous communities. That's unacceptable.
Miller also insists his department has learned from the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, and they're focused on how the coronavirus may impact vulnerable communities.
If you look at the record of the government in 2019, our budget adopted an emergency management plan, health plan of about $79 million to start addressing these issues way before coronavirus was an issue at all.
Ashton says contact with Northern Manitoba First Nations by Ottawa over COVID-19 is non-existent or superficial at best. Todd Lamarand, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Meanwhile, the first Canadian death in connection to the coronavirus has been announced in BC.
We have had a death here in British Columbia.
British Columbia's health officer says that the man who died was a resident in a nursing home in North Vancouver's Lynn Valley. His case was first reported on Saturday. There's now a total of 32 cases in that province, with 4 people having recovered completely. 2 of the new cases were community cases, and 2 were imported cases with travel history from Iran and Italy. Health Minister Patty Hajdu spoke about Canada's first death from the coronavirus during question period in the House of Commons today. She spoke after being asked by the opposition about hospitals that are complaining about a shortage of masks and protective equipment and beds.
It's deeply saddening to hear the news out of British Columbia, where we have heard that our first patient of coronavirus has passed away in Canada, and I know that we all send our condolences to the family. I will say, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's letter follows the one that I sent to my counterparts not long ago, also requesting that they put on paper exactly where they think they are going to have shortages. We have received several responses from provinces and territories in terms of what kinds of needs they might have. We're working very closely with them to make sure that we can provide them with the resources.
Just ahead of this week's First Ministers meeting in Ottawa, Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief for Quebec and Labrador, Ghislain Picard, has a special request for federal and provincial leaders. He wants another special First Ministers meeting to specifically discuss First Nations issues, and he's asking Quebec Premier François Legault to table that idea. According to Picard, continuing to turn a, quote, blind eye to Indigenous rights and access to services is only going to yield more crises in the future. He says that Wet'suwet'en and solidarity protests and blockades are proof that change is needed. Hundreds of Métis delegates from across the Métis Nation homeland are in Saskatoon this week. They're there for the Métis Nation Citizen Forum on Identity and Citizenship. Priscilla Wolfe was there.
What is Métis identity in 2020? Well, that's the question many delegates here are asking, with the new registration process rolling out across the country. Manitoba, Alberta, and Saskatchewan each have online resources for members of each province to register. A national registry is not in place as of yet. Ontario also has one that some say is too simplified, and this has caused some division on what each province considers criteria to be Métis.
It might seem a little complicated now because I think some folks are kind of moving away from where the plan was 20-some years ago. In 2002, all of the governing members of the Métis Nation got together and they unanimously passed the national definition. And that had been followed by 4 out of 5 of the governing organizations right up until now.
Ron Quintel of the Fort McKay Métis Nation in Alberta says there's a lot of challenges on defining Métis identity for each province because Saskatchewan and Ontario are straying from the definition that was passed in 2002.
There was a message this morning brought forward about a national registry, which I think is an absolute need in this country. I think for us to look at truly defining who we really are, I think that we need to take it from the national basis, especially when we're looking at reconciliation at a national level. I think that's the level that we as a nation need to come together on.
The hope is that this Métis Nation citizenship and Homeland Conference will provide the opportunity to discuss Métis Nation citizenship rules. Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Certainly lots going on in the Métis Nation. Coming up after the break, we've got more Métis. Here's a sneak peek followed by a look at tomorrow's weather.
I'm Chris Stewart. Coming up, part 1 of my stories on the Métis settlements in Alberta. From their beginnings to the government taking back some of their land and where they are today. That's coming up on the APTN National News.
Off to the east coast, we've got zeros for Charlottetown and Fredericton and cloudy skies there. Minus 26 in Clear and Inukjuak, Kuujjuaq minus 21 in sunshine. Chibougamau minus 6 and snow, 4 and cloud in Montreal. Ottawa is cloudy and 8 degrees, minus 4 and sunshine for Sault Ste. Marie, minus 13 in Big Trout Lake, clear skies, minus 7 and clear in Kapuskasing. Sunshine and minus 21 for Churchill, Norway House and the Paw are minus 6 and sunny. Minus 4 in sunshine for Winnipeg, 2 and sunny in Dauphin. 2 in sunshine for Saskatoon, 4 in sunny in Regina. Minus 1 in sunshine for Buffalo Narrows, minus 5 for Uranium City and Stony Rapids, and snow. Welcome back. In Alberta, the Métis have something that is unique. It's the only province in Canada where the Métis have their own land base. For 80 years, these 8 settlements have been home to generations of Métis. In this first of 3 stories, APTN National News' Chris Stewart brings us the history of these Métis settlements.
Herb Lair is the president of the Métis Settlements General Council and member of the Fishing Lake Métis Settlement, one of 8 Métis settlements in Alberta. Lair knows all about the beginnings of the settlements. In 1932, 5 men formed the Métis Association of Alberta and fought to have their own land. In 1939, they succeeded, and the East Prairie Métis Colony was started.
And so they came forward and they advocated, and they had a federation of Métis, of the Métis settlements of Alberta, which they then took forward their concerns on our behalfs and continued to advocate for us and to create change for us. They're our founding fathers.
Marcel Auger has lived in the East Prairie Métis Colony, changed to settlement in 1990, since he was 5 years old. He says his family's first years were tough, but his family prospered.
And when the settlements opened up, you could hunt any time of the year in the settlement for your food. And then you could trap. So it was a good opportunity for my dad and the family.
Marcel says his family had a large area of land to develop.
We survived on 40 acres of land. You know, we had cattle, hogs, and chickens, and whatever, and horses. We had a lot of horses. Probably used to have about 50 head of horses, but we used them for work and for everything, you know. Whatever we use horses, and it was good.
In all, there were 12 Métis settlements created across the province, mostly in the north and not close to any large city. Not all the land was equal. Some had better soil than others. Some had lumber or oil. In the 1950s, 4 of the settlements were taken back by the Alberta government.
We had our members who were taken out of those communities. They were forced at gunpoint in some cases to leave their homes. The minute they were out of the home, those homes were burnt in front of them. We were told back then, the members were told, this land can't sustain you. And so they moved from, in most cases, very rich in agriculture capabilities as well as rich in the ability for oil and gas production, and moved to communities that had less opportunity.
The Metis Settlement Act was implemented in 1989, giving the settlement more power to self-govern. The settlements had sued in 1968 for lost revenues. It took over 20 years, but they were awarded $310 million in 1990, paid out over 17 years. Today, the president wants the federal government to step up with funding that he says they are obligated to after the 2016 Daniels decision by the Supreme Court, which ruled that the federal government has a fiduciary duty to Métis and non-status Indians.
Thank you very much, province of Alberta, for stepping up and being stepdaddy. That when nobody else wanted to take on responsibility for us, you did. And you created a Métis Settlement Act and helped move us forward. But the DNA testing was done, and it was done in 1996 in the Supreme Court of Canada. Federal government, you have the fiduciary responsibility, you're daddy. And at this current point in time, daddy's been a not too good of daddy in stepping up, and we refer to them as deadbeat dads right now.
APTN asked Marcel Auger why it is that no other province has land exclusively for the Métis.
Under Section 35 of the Constitution, we're all the same. So the Métis people from other provinces, we're no different than we are here in Alberta. We might live a little different than they do, but I don't know. And it's hard to say. I think they could get land. If they fight for it, they could.
The 8 settlements have a total size of 500,000 hectares, or the size of Prince Edward Island. 6,500 people live across the settlements. Coming up tomorrow, Paddle Prairie Métis Settlement lost over a dozen homes and almost all of their hunting grounds from a massive fire this past May. APTN National News looks at how they are returning to normal after this tragedy.
That special perspectives on Métis settlements in Alberta will continue with Part 2 tomorrow and Part 3 on Wednesday. We need to take another break, but still ahead, new developments among the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en, as one says he now supports the Coastal GasLinks pipeline. First, here's the rest of tomorrow's weather for the west and the north. Starting off in northern Alberta, we got 0 and snow for high level, 3 and cloud for Peace River and Grand Prairie. 5 and cloud for Edmonton, 7s and sunshine for Calgary and Lethbridge. 7s for Vancouver and Campbell River, cloud and rainy skies there. Sandspit, rain and 6 degrees, 1 and sunshine for Fort Nelson. -10 and snow for Dawson City, -22 and snow for Rock River. Norman Wells, -19 and snow, -10 and snow for Yellowknife. Tuktoyaktuk, -27 and snow, clear skies in Sax Harbor, -27. -30 in Cambridge Bay, clear skies. Whale Cove and Chesterfield, snow and -20. Palioke, -31 and clear skies. Igloolik, -28 and snow. Pangertung, -21 and clear skies. Welcome back. The blocked railroads and other acts of solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs opposed to a pipeline have died down, but the conflict is not over yet, as there remain many outstanding land rights issues and also governance issues within the community itself. APTN reporter Brett Forrester has been writing about what got Wet'suwet'en to where things are at today. The first 2 parts were published on aptnnews.ca last week. Brett joins us from Ottawa now to talk about the third part of his 3-part series. So, Brett, one hereditary House chief has spoken out in support of the pipeline. Does that mean that there's divisions in the clans that make up the nation?
I would say absolutely there is division within the clans. There's definitely division within the Wet'suwet'en Nation. We've seen this emerge slowly in the media. But the key, I would argue, is for us not to sensationalize that division. No nation, no society speaks with one voice on any issue. And I think you could even make the argument that given these solidarity demonstrations that we've seen, there's been many non-Indigenous people marching and many non-Indigenous people demonstrating. So you could even argue that the Canadian nation is as divided or even more divided about the issue of pipelines than the Wet'suwet'en Nation. But yes, we've seen one hereditary House chief has spoken out. There is 9 currently sitting out of 13. 4 of the titles are vacant. Mm-hmm. But again, this division is to be expected, and I would say the key is not to make not to sensationalize that division.
Yeah, I think talking about the division is important. Sensationalizing it is something totally different. Before this, we had been hearing that it was the elected chiefs who felt one way and hereditary chiefs that felt one way, and now it's looking like there might be some internal division amongst the hereditary chiefs, which we will have to just wait till I understand they're in Feast Hall right now, kind of discussing these issues amongst themselves. So I guess that's something that we will, of course, have to pay attention to. Where does the government and the Wet'suwet'en stand now? We understand that there was a tentative agreement. Do you know anything new on that?
Yeah, so they're having clan meetings this week, and they've had some last week. They've taken it to the First Nations to meet with the elected official, band council officials. But there's really no timeline for when they're going to either ratify this agreement. During the clan meetings, they will vote on it. Each clan will have its own vote. And what they have to do after that is have an all-clan feast. They have to have a large feast according to their pre-colonial governance system. And it is in that feast where they will finally decide whether or not to ratify or reject this proposed arrangement, at which point the federal and provincial governments have said they will return to ink the deal. But there's no set timeline, and I think they are taking their time on this now that the blockades have somewhat subsided. There's a little bit of breathing room for them to have some healthy discussion and healthy debate on this. And as we know, it does not touch on the pipeline, so that issue remains unresolved, and there really is no clear indication on how that's going to play out in their feasts and in their clan meetings.
Well, thanks for taking the time to share this with us. This is, we'll of course stay tuned. The story is nowhere near being done, it doesn't look like.
Thank you.
We are all out of time for your news tonight. Be sure to check out that in-depth look at the Wet'suwet'en conflict on our website, aptnnews.ca. And tomorrow, beginning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, we're going to have live coverage of testimony from the House of Commons Committee on what they're calling the Indigenous crisis in Canada. On tap first is one of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs who was stripped of her title by men who took issue with her support of the CJL pipeline through the territory. Watch the APTN News Facebook page for that, again at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.